So in the last session, we started looking at a concept of needs analysis, which is a document where you write down every little detailed need that you might have in an HR system. We specifically looked at a data dictionary where you outline every little piece of information that you would want stored in an HRIS. And we also had a discussion on security needs and, of course, privacy legislation. In this session, session 6, we're going to have a look at a couple more needs, reports, for example, legal reports, and also connectivity with other systems. So first, let's have a look at report requirements. Remember, this is a section within your needs analysis that will identify any reports that your system might have to do. Now, keep in mind, you're already doing reports. And a report could be simply a document that you produce. It could be an Excel sheet. It could be a government form that you fill out. A report is anything at all that is an output from your system, so something that you would give to somebody. And I'll show you examples shortly. But it is very important to document the reports that you need to do, because a good HRIS will make those reports available for you. And one of the biggest cost savings of an HRIS is to reduce the amount of administrative work required to do reports. So in this section, you would go to everybody in HR. You would get samples of all the reports they do, and be careful to cross off or black out any identifiable information, anything that's confidential. You're just looking for the structure of the report, what it's in it, what is required of it. So once you take samples from everybody in HR, you would then go outside of HR and ask other managers of other departments the types of reports that they might want. Now keep in mind, you are doing this for them. Majority of the people that will require reports from you are external, whether it's external to HR, whether it's other managers, other departments, government, insurance companies, what it might be. Now, when you put together a list of these reports and put samples in an appendix, don't put the same type of report over and over. For example, you might have simple lists. And a simple list would look something like this, okay? It's something we're all used to. It's simply a bunch of names, let's say, or some data, departments, products, whatever it is. And in each column you have information. It's a simple list. So if you can do one of these, I'm pretty sure you can do a lot of them. So you don't have to keep taking examples of these. In which case you might want to see if your new HR system can output the data. So imagine you have an HRIS, you export the data and bring it into Excel, and you could do simple lists that way, but you can always do it inside the HRIS as well. And you're looking out for the capability. What we want to get to is some of the more unique type of report situations. For example, you might need to do comparison reports, year over year. One department versus another, one group versus another, and you might get a report that looks like this. So for example, we're comparing 2018 to 2021 salaries. And then further, you might need reports that have computations done on them. I mean, you know the calculations you're doing. For example, we talked about compa ratio in a previous session. If that's a need, it's a computation, salary divided by midpoint. Whatever that might be, you identify it as a need. In this case, we have percent change. We're calculating absenteeism rate. So if you're doing analytics, high-end statistical work in HR, which isn't always the case, so don't worry. But if you are and you need that capability, then make sure your HR system can actually do it within or allow you to export the data so you can bring it into systems like Excel or R or Minitab or whatever it might be. Now you might also have a need for graphics. Okay, so we mentioned here simple lists, comparison reports, calculations you need to do, but also graphics. So I know HR departments that don't ever do graphics, but I know HR departments that they live on graphics, and it's part of what bosses want. It's part of what you've been doing for years. And if you need graphics capability, of course Excel does it, but imagine being able to do graphs at the click of a button right within your new HRIS, so you can avoid the export-import business, right? Exporting data from your system to Excel, for example. But the new thing is data visualization, where your charts become interactive, meaning if I click on any one item on the chart, it expands into something else, another view. And we use systems like Tableau to do that. So you would identify Tableau as a need, But then before you buy your HRIS, see if the data from HRIS can automatically go into Tableau so that you don't have to keep going back and forth. And then, of course, make sure you take a look at unique reports. So in addition to just report requirements, we want to look at legal report requirements. So you'd go to everybody in HR and say, okay, what legal reports are you doing? And that means for the government. And government likes things either in a form that they give you, like the one you're looking at. This is a common form. It's called the WSIB, Workplace Safety Insurance Board Form 7. You can download these for free, right? And by the way, I do recommend that as while you're part of this program, download as many common government forms that you can and just kind of look at them. So at least during an interview or your first job, you're somewhat familiar with what's required. But take a look. Each one of these pieces of data here is going to be a box in your system. Why not identify these government reports and try to have them built into your system? Wouldn't that be awesome? Rather than having your system give you the data and you fill in the report, why not have the system fill it in for you? It's quite possible. I'm not suggesting all systems have that, but if you identify it early on, you could talk to the people that are going to sell you the system and say, can you build it in for me? And chances are they will, or quite a few exist. So Workplace Safety Insurance Form 7, 9, there's record of employment, there's T-slips, there's one called Employment Equity, Forms 1 to 8. And some of them are fillable, like you just fill it in with data, but then you have to start writing. Pay equity reports are where you start writing. The government says this is the information I need. There's no form. But imagine an HRIS will get you the data compiled quickly so that you can start writing rather than spending most of your time getting the data, right? So that's the idea. This is what we want to accomplish when we identify reports in report requirements. Now, I do want to give you an example of a company that had a unique report and what they managed to do in terms of an HRIS. So there's one needs analysis done where HR reached out to everybody, and a compensation team, the people who decide on pay increases for everybody, said for years they were manually calculating next year's pay. And they would be doing a manual table, something like this. They draw it by hand. And on the left side, they have every performance rating, performance review score for each employee. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And on the top, they would have their compare ratio. And this is how they broke it down. This is not standard. But they had people less than 70, low end, between 70, 90, between 91 and 110, and on the high end at 110. So their job, and it took them months to do this, they looked at the economy, they looked at their own budgeting, they looked at cost of living, inflation, and they would then type in a number here, meaning that a person with the highest performance rating this year with the lowest compare ratio will get the highest percentage increase. Okay? And then they go on and say the lowest performance rating and the highest compare ratio would get the lowest amount of pay increase. Right? And they go in and type all these numbers in. So the next one would be a little bit less, 5.9%. The next one would be less, 5.1%, and so on. And if you go down here, it might only be 0.9%. So they'd fill in these numbers and then manually calculate. So they look up an employee, look at their performance rating, let's say it was a 5, and their compare ratio, somebody else would calculate it, let's say it was between 70 and 90, they would then take 5.9% pay increase for that person and then multiply it and leave that number to the side. And before they started using Excel, they were literally doing it manually. And that will be for thousands and thousands of employees, they'd be doing it. So although in Excel you can do it in using VLOOKUPs and so on, they actually went to the HRIS coordinator and said, yeah, look, this is a thing we do. Can it be automated? So it's kind of like a report, right? So they sketched it out on paper. The HRIS person put it in as an appendix, as part of samples of the reports. And they went to the vendor before they purchased an HRIS and said, can you build this in? And this particular vendor said yes. And it would cost I think it was $15,000. Now you be the judge to see if it's worth it, okay? So now what happens is the salary admin compensation people, once a year, they go into a screen in HRIS, that's called reports, and it will be the pay increase worksheet or pay increase matrix or table. This screen would pop up. And all they have to do is type in these numbers one at a time. Remember, that's where the work is. That's what you want to focus on, is to see if the numbers are okay, if they're legitimate, too high, too low, are they balanced, are they fair? And as they manipulate these numbers, they click a button called Preview, and it would automatically look on the system, every single employee, they look at their performance rating, and the compa ratio is automatically calculated, and it would within seconds for thousands of employees multiply their salary by that percentage. And then if they found that the percentages are too high, all they have to do is go and readjust these numbers on this table, press Preview again, and it would automatically calculate everybody's pay. So that administrative work is down, it's gone. Now they can do hundreds and hundreds of scenarios in a matter of days. It wouldn't take them months anymore. And when they're ready to update the pay, there's an update button. When you click update, it'll automatically do that on HRIS for everybody and send that data to payroll. That's an example of the importance of identifying reports and unique things that your HR people might want. And you would do that in this section. So now let's have a look at a mini return on investment just relating to reports. We did this in a previous session. We'd use attendance or absenteeism to justify a cost for an HRIS, and we proved that an HRIS can substantially save a lot of money, or save substantial amount of money simply by automating attendance tracking. But in this case, let's have a look at a report. Okay, very simple numbers. Let's say your company does a government report called a record of employment. And it's federal, pan-Canadian. It's the Employment Insurance Act that requires it. So every time an employee leaves your organization, whether they're on contract or they got let go or whatever it might be, even if they retired, you have to legally fill out a record of employment. Now, you can download the form. That's not a problem, but have a look, okay? Have a look at the form, download it from the government. It's a one-page, and it might only have, what, 12, 13 boxes on it? And to actually physically write down the information in those boxes does not take that long. But to get the data to fill in might take upwards of 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Now, to give you perspective, Seneca does thousands of these a year. Okay, probably about 1,500, 2-3 times a year actually, so it's thousands. So every time one of our contract faculty leaves, the contract is finished, semester is over, we have to give them an ROE. Now imagine you're doing 1,000 of these a year at, let's say, an average of 30 minutes, right? That's 30,000 minutes. And if you divide that by 60 minutes in an hour, it comes up with 500 hours. So technically we could save close to 500 hours. Now, let's say you get an HRIS that has a record of employment built in. So all you have to do is click a button. It will automatically do a record of employment for one or more employees. So now you're down to 5 minutes per. You're going from 30 minutes to 5 minutes. And you know what? That's 5,000 minutes. It comes to 83 hours, but I'm just going to say 100 hours. Is that okay? So you're going from 500 hours you were spending doing these reports to less than 100 hours. All right? Now, don't forget the frustration and all of that that you're saving as well, the inaccuracies and mistakes you might make. This way, the system does it for you. And it can automatically e-file this report directly into the government's computer. Now, here's the savings, okay? We're saving 400 hours. And let's say the people you're paying to do this on average would be $20 per hour. Now, I'm not suggesting fire somebody in HR because you don't need them anymore. I'm saying you don't have to have as many part-time assistant hours, not as much overtime. But look at this. It's $8,000 in savings just on one report. I mean, you multiply that by 2 or 3 reports, and that example about the compensation adjustments we just looked at, that could be another $20,000, $30,000. And also look at savings from a point of view that when HR does not spend so much time on administrative work like these reports, the administrative side, then they're able to spend that time on more value-added, proactive, strategic work, which, I mean, you can't really put a price tag to it readily. You can, but it's not. I mean, that's got to be worth a lot, right? Like, let's say you were able to have more health and safety meetings because you have more time. And those meetings result in a more healthy, more protected workforce, and it saves lives or health. Immeasurable, right? Now I want to move on. I want to talk about the next need that we have. And it gets a little bit technical, but let's not think of it as too technical. Okay, we do have a need to connect our HRIS with other systems. Now think about it. You're about to put all of your HR data on a computer. I don't care what the computer looks like, okay? Desktop, laptop, tablet, doesn't matter. Cloud. By the way, cloud is when you send data for storage somewhere else. It's on the cloud, on the internet, right? So it doesn't matter what it looks like, but we have data. It's electronic. We shouldn't have to take paper from somebody else and type in the data all the time. Nor should we have to send paper to somebody else so they can type it into their system, because every time a human touches that paper, there's going to be mistakes. If I have the data electronically, digitally, I should be able to share with them. That's what connectivity means. Now, the way we share, we can integrate the systems or we could interface the systems. Don't worry too much about that. You'll read the definitions in my HRIS toolkit and the page references I give you. But integration is when you fully connect your system with another one, so change in one automatically results in a change in yours. So for example, if you integrate with, let's say, production, then if a person made units, it would add them up at the end of the week, and those units numbers would come straight into your HRIS so you can do performance analysis. If you integrate your attendance system with your HRIS, every time somebody swipes their card at a door, the data comes automatically into your HRIS, right? Now, in this section of the needs analysis, we want to, first of all, have a look at whether we want to integrate things or simply interface them. By the way, interface is not that expensive. It's less than integration. It's where you import and export data. You integrate with another system by doing things manually, okay? But we need to identify what other systems we might want to connect with. So ask yourself, who do we share data with? Who do we get data from, and who do we give data to? And think of it from the perspective of groups within the organization, even your own department, and outside of the organization. I'll give you a list, okay? First of all, within the organization, think about it. You are sharing data with payroll. Payroll might not even be part of HR. They might be in part of finance in another office. But when you click a button, remember in HRIS, we hire people, we do pay increases, we change benefits, we have attendance, all the data is there. You click a button and the data goes straight to payroll. Then payroll does all the deductions and the taxes, all that. You don't have to send them paper anymore. I might want to connect my HRIS with my GL, my general ledger, which is like the company's books. Remember, we spend money, and that money has to be posted under different departments or accounts. Why not have the data go straight to general ledger? So not by employee, but let's say by department. We add up all the costs, health and safety costs, training costs, pay costs, benefits costs. And those things get posted right into your books. We might want to connect with production so that every time somebody makes units or rejects or defective units, whatever it might be, the data comes into HRIS so we can use it for performance measures, right? It could be a call center system, a customer service management, CSR system, customer service relationship, or CRS, I forget, customer relationship management, CRM, sorry. Might want to connect with that so that you get performance data. Data about employees comes into your HRIS. You might want to connect with MKIS, which is a marketing information system. Maybe I'll use that as an example in a minute. You might want to connect to the internet for various reasons, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. Now imagine also within HR though, not just other departments, but within HR. What if you had an HRIS and then you went out and purchased another system called LMS or CMS, which is Learning Management System, Course Management System, which would be like your training and development. You didn't get an HRIS that had it built in. You went out and bought two separate systems. You want the two to connect. You might buy a separate benefit system or a health and safety system or an attendance system. That's fine, nothing wrong with that. But you want to make sure that the two can integrate or connect so that, for example, if I hire an employee within my HRIS, I don't have to then go send those records to training to get them to create a new employee on their own system. It's automatic. As soon as I create it on mine, it automatically goes to the other system. And that's integration. Interfaces, I actually have to send the data to the other system. I physically do it. Export it or send it or upload it, download it, save it, open it. Now, how the connection happens, by the way, don't worry about it. I mean, it could be wireless, it could be network, it could be as simple as saving data on a USB and giving it to the other people to import or open, right? Now, I don't know if you ever heard of Canada's Wonderland. It's a theme park here in Toronto, north of Toronto. We implemented a system there called WinHR. And before that, I mean, if you ever worked there, you know what I'm talking about, right? They have to process over 4,400 employees when the park opens, so January, February, March actually. And you'd have to go to HR, fill out the paperwork. They would enter you into HRIS. They would then send you to security. Security would enter you into their system, and you have to wait. They would produce a badge for you. Then you go to uniforms, and then a big long lineup, and uniforms would verify. They'd enter you into their system. So what we did is, as soon as you sit down with HR, they enter you into their HRIS. The camera is right there, takes your picture. That data automatically goes to security. And when you get there, they just verify who you are, give you your badge. That data went automatically to uniforms so that your size is automatically ready. You just have to give them ID and you get your uniform and you're out of there. Fully integrated. But I do have an example for you, and it's related to MKIS. Okay, I'll show that to you in a minute. Just hang on. Let me cover off the outside first. But take a look. What organizations or groups outside of your organization do you want to share data with? Well, payroll. So even though we have payroll inside, we share data. They do all the calculations, but they can't direct deposit money into an employee's bank account. So they have to send the data to a bank or a payroll vendor like Ceridian or ADP, right? How about your insurance carrier, your company that carries your insurance for your employees? Well, you hire an employee, you should be able to automatically send that data to insurance company rather than filling out a form and sending the form. Maybe it's the government. What if you filled out a record of employment? Should you print it and mail it to them? Or click a button and directly e-file it to them? Workplace safety insurance, T-slips. Right? Your job is to identify what other systems can we share data with so that when you get an HRIS, you'd be able to at least have that connection made or be able to export the data. Have the data leave your HRIS so another department can grab it, can have it. Now your IT people can always write the integration, the bridge between the two, that software that they write. That's not a problem, but you need to identify it now. Okay. Now let me give you an example. It's a marketing related example, so have a look. A very interesting story, okay, of how true synergies exist between departments. So here's an example of how we can create synergies between HR, HRIS, and other departments. It was a few years ago. There's a large consumer products company that's North American. You know, they make soap, shampoos, food, all sorts of stuff that you might buy. And they had tens of thousands of employees in North America. So the marketing department would send products out, actual products, to employees, ask them to fill out a survey of what they thought about the product. So in essence, they were testing the products out on their employees. Not from a clinical sort of chemical point of view, but more about what they thought, the colors, the advertising, the packaging, the flavors, the scents. So they'd send out these boxes of product, and in the box would be a survey of what you thought about the product, several questions. But then they'd also ask about demographics, you know, age, income, education levels, children in the household, things that marketing can use for marketing research. That data would be put inside their system called MKIS. So when HRIS was being considered, The HRIS coordinators are smart. They went out to every department head, including the director of marketing, and explained to them what HRIS is going to do and asked them, how can HRIS serve your purposes? So other managers are saying they like these types of reports and they'd be able to like it, to view data about their employees, etc. But the director of marketing came and they got excited. They said, hey, your new HRIS now is going to have digital data, electronic data, and it's going to be demographics of all of our employees, right? Accurate, 100%. And HR goes, yeah. So marketing goes, can we have that data? And right away, HRIS puts its privacy hat on and says, nope, can't do it. But they said something smart. They said, we'll get back to you tomorrow. And they did. They went back to the director of marketing and said, look, we can't give you the data just like that. There's privacy concerns, but here's what we can do. We can do something for you to help your marketing research happen. Because marketing knew that employees that they used to test stuff on, their products, were not always truthful in answering their demographic information. So what HR said is, you're going to give us a budget every year, I don't know, $100,000 or something. We're then going to create a middle system. I just put it in as a box, okay? IT would do this. And they would hire a person to sit in the middle, what we call a data scrubber, okay? Now, the box in the middle is simply a system, a little software program that takes every employee name from the HRIS, brings it in here, and puts a 10-digit code next to each name. So only HR knows who the employee is with that 10-digit code. That 10-digit code now would go from the box without the name into the MKIS. So marketing now would randomly send out boxes of product, just boxes. And in the box would simply be a survey that only asked what the employee thought about the product, no demographics. Got it? Now the employee otherwise would receive it was like a sticker with the barcode, with their 10-digit code on it. Or they would have their 10-digit code. That's their own, okay? So when they fill out the survey, all they have to do is take the sticker off, stick it on the survey. So now your identity is associated with the survey, but nobody knows who you are. Or they would write their 10-digit code onto it. Now, of course, it's all done on the web, so you can just scan in your card, your employee card, and it would help you finish your survey. So that data, all those surveys came back to the middle, the box. This person would scan them in. In the old days, they would scan them, but now it's digital off the web. They would then associate the results of the survey, what the employee thought about the product, their 10-digit code, and they would match it up with the employee name. That then goes back to HRIS. HRIS then, for that employee, would pull out all the significant demographic data, 100% accurate. Their age range, their income range, right down to their postal code, exactly what neighborhood they live in, number of children, education levels, anything that marketing could find useful to connect to what they thought about the product, HRIS would take out. And then that data would go to the box in the middle. It would remove the name. So the person in the middle, the data scrubber, would remove the name, any identity. So now it's no longer secret. But the scrubber would then also look at identifiable records. Like, for example, if you're only one of 2 people who lived in a particular town, and that was identifiable, he would then aggregate that data. He would either get rid of it because it was identifiable. If you were one of 6 people who made over, let's say, $300,000, then that would probably be taken out as well, or aggregated. Aggregate means averaged out. So nobody can truly figure out who you are, right? Then that data would go to MKIS with the results of the survey, and marketing through their system would do all the marketing analysis that they needed to. And you know what? That earned HR so much respect. Nobody questioned the budget that they were asking for. In fact, marketing over the years would divert some of their budget to do HR programming. So you used systems, you used a synergy, an idea, you thought outside of the box to gain, in this case, political power, or at least respect, which results in power, so that people then won't knock down what it is you're doing in HR. So that was just one example. I want to move a little bit and talk about the internet. So we're talking about connectivity. And one of the things we have to ask is there any reason we might want to connect our HRIS with the internet? Now, you all know what the internet is. Nobody owns it. It's out there. It's cheap or it's free. It's already been done. Satellites are already in place. An intranet, if you don't know what an intranet is like the internet, but it's within your organization only. Like my Seneca Blackboard is our intranet. You go to a bank, log in, that's their intranet. But it works off the internet. Now, there's several companies that control the internet because they own all the satellites and all the wires. But no single person owns it. No single company. So the beauty is we could tap into the internet for, again, free or very cheap. We don't have to run a wire from our computer to the other computer. So the question to you is, why would we want to connect our HRIS with the internet? You don't have to. You see that connection there? I could cut that wire. No internet. And my HRIS is still my HRIS. It's still there. It's still in your office. Well, there's about 4 good reasons we should. And by the way, keep in mind, things have gotten cheaper over the years, right? So we're able to do this. But number one answer, I think, is it would let you do e-recruitment, which is electronic recruitment. Recruit means you're looking for people to work for you. E-recruitment means you do it electronically. Not where you send a resume in. It's where you do it on the web. Okay. Now, in your recruitment and selection course, I believe next term, you're going to learn about e-recruitment. But when somebody sends a resume in, right, you've all done it. Whether you send a paper resume by mail or you fax it, that's traditional. If you attach a resume in an email, that's the same as sending it in. You have to ask yourself, when that data goes to HR, what happens to it on the other side? Well, typically, it's a human that will either read the paper resume or they will look at it on the screen. So if it's an attachment, they will simply open it and look at it. To me, that's exactly the same. That is not e-recruitment. It's when you take the data from everybody's resume, you put it in an HRIS, in a corner, it's called applicant tracking. Remember, before you become an employee, you're an applicant, you're not an employee. But if I were to get all of your resume data into the HRIS, either I type it in, I scan it in, or pure e-recruitment says you fill in your resume on a screen. So when you go to Workopolis or JobShark or Indeed or even LinkedIn, when you fill those fields in, the beauty is everybody in the world is filling in the same boxes as you. So it doesn't matter what your resume looks like now, you just copy paste. So when you submit, that data now goes to the recruiter, and if all they did was read it on their screen, that's still not really e-recruitment. You just got an easier resume, that's all. It was easier to get in. But when your HRIS has all the data from every application, every resume, and it matches it up with everything that's required for the job from the job description, and shortlists it for you, and then allows you to then do the administrative things like booking interviews, booking people's time, rooms, flights, hotels, keeping track of costs, and doing analysis on the best sources of recruitment and the yields and all those ratios. That's e-recruitment. Right down to automatically initiating a job offer, right? Alerting the employee, right down to saying, hey, thank you for your resume, we'll get back to you. Or, hey, here's a job offer, accept it in 2 days. And the employee sends it back. Then it makes the person an employee, starts the onboarding orientation process automatically, and sends the data to every department that needs it. Hey, we have a new employee. That's e-recruitment. Now we're going to look at a system called Taleo, T-A-L-E-O, Taleo ATS, Applicant Tracking System, later. But another reason you might want to connect with the internet is e-filing. So if you want to send forms to the government, electronically file them, meaning automatically submit them digitally, kind of like your taxes, right? But we might connect to Workplace Safety Insurance Board or Revenue Canada or Employment Insurance Commission. Find out if you could do it, or your benefits company. We might connect it to internet for e-training. And the idea is, let's say your HRIS has little digital training modules, right? What do we call that? E-learning or online or digital? What do we call it, right? Technology-based learning. Imagine your HRIS automatically figures out that an employee has a skill gap, something missing, they need training. And that digital training package automatically through the internet goes to the employee's desktop at home, let's say, or at work. And then it monitors and measures everything about that training, how long it took the person, how many times they reviewed, did they pass the quiz. And the data goes back into HRIS. So HRIS then says before training their performance was such, after training, was there an improvement or not? And also, just to look at the costs associated with it and so on. Sometimes it's just compliance. So if everyone has to do AODA training, AODA, then the system then does it and then keeps track of who's got it or not. And the last one is e-communication, and I'm referring to email, but not just email or messaging. You can do that without HRIS, right? You don't need HRIS for email. But this is where your HRIS automatically knows that it has to alert an employee and automatically sends a message, e-communication, to that employee. Hey, reminder, your interview's tomorrow. Performance interview. Reminder, fill in this form, send it in. Hey, reminder, your benefits need to be updated. I don't have to do that anymore. It's automated. And you can't generally do that without the internet, right? Think about it. Now, I want to wrap up just by talking about one more concept. It won't take that long. And it's an idea of ERP. Now, I don't know if you ever heard of ERP, and I don't want to get too technical with it. But I do want to give you the benefit of knowing what it is for two reasons. One is you might work for an organization that is in an ERP environment, so you'll have something to say about it, but also talking points during an interview. Okay? Now, ERP is just an idea. It's called Enterprise Resource Planning. Now, you don't have to read all those words down there, but enterprise is your organization. So it's sharing for data across the organization, right? So it doesn't matter what type of enterprise you are or organization you are, you have a resource. The resource is data or information. It's either raw, clean. How do you store it? Where is it stored? So an enterprise has a resource called data, and planning means you're using it for a purpose. Metrics, analytics, time management, compliance, whatever it might be. Okay, don't worry too much about what all those words mean. But when you plan, coordinate for the use of data across the organization versus every department having their own little thing, that's called ERP. Now, the way it works is you start off by identifying every system throughout your organization. Now, IT does this, okay? And they write down all the different software and systems every department's using, including HR. So currently, as you grow, you start buying software from different companies and it gets cluttered. So accounting has like 8 different softwares they're using. Accounts payable or receivable, general ledger, costing, budgeting. HR has an applicant tracking system, a small HRIS. They're using Excel and Word and all that graphing software. Production has 6 systems of their own. So what IT does, it says, look, let's grab all the data in all of these different systems and put it all into one system. Wouldn't that be awesome? So now you're not dealing with many different organizations, many companies, many vendors, and different systems that talk different ways. You're now putting it all into one big box, and I'll just show you what that might look like, okay? I just drew this diagram to give you perspective. It doesn't really look like that. But systems like SAP, PeopleSoft, Oracle, Workday even, these are systems you buy that basically allow you to scale, add any little component you want. So imagine, instead of different departments and different people logging into different systems, not talking to each other, and there's a bottleneck when you have to share data from one place to another, it takes a long time to get. Now, thousands of people around the world, when they log in, they're all logging into a screen that looks exactly the same. But when they log in, they can only get to specific parts of that system. So the way it works is there's a core, a box, an engine that you buy. Like SAP, that might only cost you $500,000, which is cheap. But then you start adding. You add a system for finance. Looks the same as any other, but it allows you to keep track of finance, which might be 8 different things. You might get an executive view dashboard. Production would have its stuff. Materials management, inventory, warehousing. Sales has CRM. Marketing has marketing information system. IT has theirs. HR will have everything integrated inside. So slowly over years, you get rid of all your other systems, grab the data, put the data back in, and the look and feel stays the same. Now, it is incredibly expensive. Like Seneca just spent $38 million. That's 38 with how many zeros? 6 zeros. Out of that, about 6-7 million was just for HR. But now it's seamless though. You don't see it as a student, but it is very seamless that when I log in and how quickly a new student information is available to me, made available. But imagine a large organization like Nestle, headquartered in Switzerland. Somebody could log in Switzerland, take a view of the entire organization throughout the world. They could zoom in quickly on just chocolate or milk or frozen food or water. They can zoom in on a country. They could zoom in on a region, a city, an office, right down to an individual person. But the cool thing is you can now build in layer upon layer of security. So even within HR, like if you work in HR in an ERP company, like Nestle, by the way, which has SAP, you would have access to a very tiny portion of HR. And in fact, if you're doing ERP, they would ask you just questions related to what you do to make your life easier, because programmers now can highly customize this. It just costs money, right? So, when we talk about buying generic systems, ones that are ready-made, you just buy them and use them, versus fully customizing your system for yourself. This is a generic system you buy that can be highly customized. Yeah, and it could be expensive. So Nestle spent over $1 billion. That's one with 9 zeros. Walmart spent close to $500 million. But these are big organizations. You can get into an ERP for, if your organization needs something like Workday for, under $10,000. But at least now you know what an ERP is. It's one big system for everything. One look and feel. Comfort level is there. Familiarity is there. So you move from one office to another, you log into the same thing.